This is an Eye on Annapolis bonus podcast.
Joining us on the phone today is David Lowery, who is the founder of Cracker, who will be playing at Ram's Head on stage for one show. It's a 1 p.m. show, so it's all ages, and it's a matinee show on September 18th. David, how are you?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm here at the University of Georgia and actually sitting in my car in the parking deck since this is much quieter than the offices. So hopefully that works for you.
Okay, so what are we doing at the University of Georgia?
I've been actually teaching the music business. This is my 11th year.
Oh my word, that's awesome.
Yeah. I have a doctorate, not that I ever demand that people call me doctor or anything like that, but I actually do kind of qualify to do this. So yeah.
Okay, now I got to ask you a question. Which do you prefer better? Do you prefer teaching or do you prefer performing and executing?
They're actually both kind of similar. I was kind of surprised by, in a way, like if you're teaching a class at a university, it's kind of all about having asses in the seats.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's not exactly that way, but like I teach at the business college, and I started out just they had a problem finding somebody to teach us a certain class here, and I started teaching it, and it got after a couple of years it got really popular, so then I was sort of asked to become full-time and teach a couple other classes. So oddly, I thought I was kind of like finding a job that wasn't so much like the music business, but it is actually in a weird way like the music business.
What do you teach the students? I mean, are you teaching them on, how to manage themselves as a performer, or? I
started teaching this class called Business Fundamentals as Applied to the Music Business. And I think it was a little bit like the dark, defense of the dark arts at Hogwarts. They had a teacher every different year. It's sort of an odd class in that you're sort of teaching, it's in the business college, sort of teaching people like fundamentals of business, like things like accounting, strategy, economics, finance, risk management, all these things like that, all your typical topics from a business school, but you're applying it to the music business. So there's not really a textbook or anything. So it's a novel challenge. So I figured out a way to do it, and I really enjoyed it, and the class became popular, so much so that we have like 2 sections of it now. It's like 300 students.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's a lot of times it's business students who are just like, oh, I'll take this. I hear this is an elective for accounting. Right? Sounds easy, right? But it's not, actually. And, and so people are like, oh, that's cool. And then you have a lot of people who are musicians or in the music program. And if they take this class and do well, they can get the music business certificate. So I have a lot of students doing that. So it's a real mix. It's like business students or musicians, or sometimes they're both. In a weird way, it's like, it's kind of like maybe the money ball of the music business, because I get to explain these interesting things, like why are there paper tickets still? Why do we have paper tickets? Why is it like an airline ticket?
Right?
An airline, you just show your. Well, I mean, I walk on the plane with just doing the clear eyeball scan and then show them my phone. So
why are there paper tickets still? Because
a lot of insiders make a lot of money off of selling them on the secondary market, or they're mitigating their risk. Like if you put a show for sale and you let brokers come in and buy tickets in bulk at face value, that's a lot of tickets that you don't have to sell. So that's why you have all these weird things. I think the famous show was the LCD sound system show a number of years ago, where like all the tickets sold in like 1 minute, but then it turned out that really there wasn't very many tickets that were sold to the public. They were all mostly sold to brokers and insiders before the show really even went on sale. And because in a way the concert promoter is offloading all their risk of selling those tickets. So you see them like even down to the level of I'm sure Ram's Head isn't selling directly to brokers, but you see like even at like a show at like Ram's Head, where you'll see quite a number of tickets get scooped up and then sold at a markup on StubHub.
Sure.
Maybe for a show like ours, it might only be 15 or 20, but there's actually large organized groups, perfectly legal, who go and buy bulk tickets, sort of with the idea that certain shows become really popular and you can make 10 times the face value on them.
There you go, man. I'm getting my education in music business here. But let's talk about the music. I mean, you are the founder of Cracker, which has been around since 1990, which was sort of the, I wouldn't say successor of, but it was next in your step of career from Camper von Beethoven. And you founded it with Johnny Hickman?
Yeah, I founded it with Johnny Hickman. And actually, Davey Farragher was somebody that we knew growing up in Redlands, California. He's on the first 2 albums, but he went off. He's kind of more of a side person. He went off to play with John Hyatt and then, of course, Elvis Costello. Right. You know he's in Elvis Costello and the Imposters because it's the original band except with Davey Farragher on bass. That's why it's the Imposters. Not the Attractions. It's because Davey Farragher's on bass. He is the imposter.
I did not know that. That's funny. That's funny.
Actually, and I'm going to see him next month because he's playing in Atlanta. So, yeah.
Is that where you're based now, Atlanta, pretty much?
I'm based in Athens, Georgia, mostly. I still have a house in Richmond, Virginia. Okay. Me and my wife kind of split our time between the two, but we're down here mostly.
Not a bad deal. Now, how did you and Johnny meet to form Cracker?
We knew each other since like 1979, I think.
Oh, wow.
We both auditioned for a sort of a cover event band that was starting to perform new wave and punk rock. And we sort of went like, looking for something to do. We ultimately didn't. I don't know if that band ever formed or anything like that, but we kept each other's phone numbers and sort of kept in contact over the years and played in a few other little side bands and stuff like that over the years. And then when Camper broke up, I got him to see if he wanted to form a new ensemble, and it became Cracker.
And you've been going strong since 1990, and I'd probably arguably say your top hits are Low Teen Angst and Eurotrash Girl. There's been many others, actually. I mean, you've got, 13 albums? Something
like that. I mean, I think officially there's like 10 original studio albums that aren't like compilations or greatest hits or B-sides or anything like that. There's, I believe, 10 of those full albums. So, yeah.
Right. Well, we obviously know what you were doing during COVID as far as keeping the money rolling in. I mean, you were cashing the university checks, I guess. But is it great to get back on the road again now as an artist?
Kind of. I mean, we're doing very short runs of shows. Back in June, we did do almost 2 weeks. And we did that in a really interesting... We basically took a bus and kept our own little bubble, and almost all those shows were outside. Just the probability is the longer you go on tour with the more people, the more likely that you will get an infection in your band that will require you to shut the whole tour down. So we've really only done really minimal touring. Like the shows coming up in Annapolis are basically 3 shows that we strung together over a weekend. And most of these actually were strung together with a City Winery New York City show. I think that was postponed from a year ago, which would have been booked like almost a year before that. So you see, we're kind of picking up some pieces that were done 2 years ago. We haven't really fully committed to a real tour yet. I think a lot of artists got ahead of themselves on this and are finding it's really hard to keep your band COVID free. It's like the more people, the more shows. Yeah, I'm not like a lot of artists. I think there's like not a huge risk of us playing on stage and playing to an audience that's largely masked and vaccinated and stuff like that. The problem is just getting so many people on the road in your little traveling group, and then it's like the airport shuttles or the plane flights or all that stuff that you're going to get an infection in your band, and then you have to take the whole thing off the road for a while. So until we can tolerate basically people getting an infection, and where we're treating COVID more like a cold or something like that, or maybe a mild flu. Until we're at that point, I don't really see like me going on the road for we basically would go on the road for about 4 or 5 weeks every summer with Camper, Van Beethoven, and Cracker together. Like there's like 12 people on the road mixing with everybody everywhere.
Yeah, no,
right?
I see where you're coming from. But what can we expect from this little mini tour that we've got that's coming to the Ram's Head on the 18th of September? Well,
one thing is our pedal steel player is out on a different tour, so we brought this guy Rurik, R-U-R-I-K, it's a Russian name, I believe, playing fiddle with us on this tour. So we don't always have a fiddle player with us. So we were going to lean into the songs that had a little fiddle on them, as well as a few Camper Van Beethoven songs. So slightly different lineup. So that's what we're doing, trying to keep it fresh that way.
Well, you've been doing it for 30 years. I mean, back in 90, did you ever think that that Cracker would have the staying power that it does? I mean, it's funny. I was talking to my son, who is, you could say he's probably not your demographic, but he's 28. And I said, "Oh yeah, no, I'm going to be talking to David Lowery, with Cracker tomorrow." And he's like, "Oh my God, that's so cool." And I mean, he was able to rattle off some songs, which somewhat surprised me, because a lot of times he rolls rolls his eyes when I talk about songs that that I liked when I was younger. But I mean, did you see this having the staying power back in the 90s?
Not necessarily. I mean, now we were all, I'd come from Camper Van Beethoven, which was, kind of had a very culty following. I hoped we'd have, and I thought that's what you did, is maybe you played till you were about 40, and then you had to do another career, and so I was going to be a writer.
Well, you've been doing
that's a little goofy, but in a way, it tells the story of what you think, So,
well, you got a birthday coming up in a couple of days too. You're happy, pre-happy birthday.
Yes, I will be 61 by the time I come to the Ram's Head, and Johnny will. It's no secret, but Johnny will be 65 by the time we come to the Ram's Head. So it's kind of crazy, but it does keep you young, keeps you in good health generally. If you don't party all the time on the road and stuff like that, it's a good physical exercise, keeps your brain fresh, And I was going to say this about your son, maybe knowing the band. Is what other kind of stuff does he like? Is he maybe more in the jam world?
He's big in EDM.
EDM. Okay.
The tech and everything else, and that's why I was surprised. I mean, we used to go to.
Yeah, that's why I have no idea why he would know us, but sometimes we've developed a pretty strong following among sort of in the Americana world and the jam band kind of world to a certain extent with Cracker, and both of those tend to skew younger than what a normal alternative rock band's audience would be at this age, right?
I like to think that I taught my kids to have an appreciation, whether you like it or not, just an appreciation of different types of music, because I used to go to the Warp Festival with them, and they were always like, "What the hell are you doing here, Dad?" And I'm like, you'd hear a screamo band, and I'd be like, I don't like it. I'm not going out to buy the CD. I appreciate the artistry and the work that goes behind it, but it's kind of funny there. And I tell you, one thing that I love about you personally, I guess, and is that the way that you took on sort of the industry with Spotify and Napster, as far as the way the streaming. And I mean, personally, for me, nothing beats live music. And if I need to beat live music, it's going to be with vinyl. Not CD. I mean, you can keep the 8 tracks and the cassettes, but that's vinyl and live. But live music, there's something about it that you just can't replicate. And you sort of led the charge on some, I guess they were class action suits or settlements or whatever it was for royalties.
They were class action lawsuits, and they were not necessarily for low royalties, although we can talk about that. It's a more complicated argument. It was actually for just the absence of royalties being properly paid, which specifically I had a class action on behalf of songwriters because basically a lot of independent songwriters, that is, record label sign performers, companies called publishers sign songwriters. And you can be a performer and a songwriter, but a publisher looks after the songwriter rights. A lot of songwriters do not sign deals with publishers. They just keep their own catalogs and self-administer and keep control of all the copyrights. It's actually kind of the way to kind of get more wealthy in the business. Like, for instance, performers who also kept their own songwriting copyrights generally are the ones who live in castles,
Right.
The Pete Townsends, the Stings, the members of Led Zeppelin. So it's not necessarily small songwriters that keep their own publishing, but a lot of small songwriters do keep their songwriter rights. And it was actually those self-administered songwriters, that self-published songwriters, as they call them, that were not paid. And this included everybody from Bob Dylan and Tom Petty down to the independent songwriters like myself. So the class action was on behalf of those writers. We weren't getting our what's called a streaming mechanical royalty from the streaming companies.
Right.
We weren't getting all of them. And I did a lot of research on it, figured out there was a class, and basically got a contingency law firm to file on a no fee contingency class basis. And that's how that worked, right? It turned out that basically all the streaming services were doing that, but I had the clearest records on basically on Rhapsody and Spotify.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, do you have a particular song that you love to play live? I mean, I'm not going to ask you what your favorite song is that you get in your catalog, but I mean, is there one that's particularly enjoyable to you as a musician playing on stage?
It varies. I mean, lately, I feel like King of Bakersfield's been a lot of fun to play because of the kind of the solos we get to throw into that, and pedal steel player definitely takes like a very odd approach to that song. It's good, right? I enjoy that, and it's also a very tricky groove to play because there's actually kind of two different shuffles in it. It's tricky.
Yeah. Cracker will be at Ram's Head on stage September 18th at 1 p.m. Are you guys busting up?
We'll be driving up actually in our little bubble, but we'll be driving up in a van. We won't be using the bus, but we have so few shows, and we're actually staying at the same hotel in Delaware. For all three of our shows.
Okay. Well,
that's what we're doing because they're all early shows. So we just drive after the show back to our hotel.
Well, it makes sense. ramsheadonstage.com is where you want to go for tickets. There are still a few left. Not a lot, but there are a few left. You want to learn more about Cracker? You want to go to crackersoul, SOUL.com, and learn all about David Lowery and Johnny Hickman and what they've been doing for... What's it? Man, I don't even want to think now. In 40 years, is that right? 90?
Well, 30 years.
30 years. Okay, unbelievable career, and I can't wait to see you here on Saturday the 18th, which is in another 2 weeks or so. And really very cool to learn about your I'll say other alter ego there down at in Georgia teaching music business. That's fantastic.
Yeah, right.
But, David, thank you very much. We will see you on the 18th at Ram's Head on stage.
Thank you very much. All right.
This has been a bonus podcast from Ion Annapolis. Please visit us at ionannapolis.net. Follow us on Facebook at All Annapolis and on Twitter at Ion Annapolis. And if you haven't subscribed to the Daily News Brief podcast, go for it. And all of your local news will be delivered to your phone, tablet, or smart device by 6 a.m. every Monday through Friday.